Hey, what's up, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about layer styles in After Effects. So, what is a layer style? So, basically, if I oversimplify it, it's a type of effect that is applied in a different way to a layer. Um, that's oversimplifying it. These are one of the most basic tools inside of After Effects. And when I started working with the software, I didn't think that I was going to be using them. I thought, I'm probably just going to be using those third party plugins that make awesome things that look like they blow up, etc. Why would I use this tool that looks so simple? And I didn't really pay a lot of attention to it. But it was with time and through the process of learning to achieve certain things that it got me into learn what a layer style can actually do. So what does a layer style actually do? Well, there is different types of layer styles. So inside of After Effects, I made a composition and I made a circle shape with a shape layer. And in order to demonstrate what a layer style is, we're going to use this shape. A layer style can be applied to almost any type of layer. So it can be a footage, it can be a picture, it can be a PNG file. There is a variety of things that you can apply it, but as long as there's image or basically RGB and alpha, it will work with those values. So in order to apply a layer style, we left click the object, and then we go to our menu, and then we select layer, and down the menu we go to layer styles, and in this drop down menu we have a couple different options. We have a show all, a remove all, but the list of all the layer styles are below that, which is the drop shadow, the inner shadow, outer glow, inner glow, bevel and emboss, satin, color overlay, gradient overlay, and stroke. So if I left click on any of these, it will apply that single layer style. But if I left click show all, it will apply all the layer styles. However, they are not visible. So as you know, here in After Effects, this little eye icon means that it's visible or it's not if you unclick it. So when you activate all the layer styles, when you select the show all option, you're going to see all these boxes that are unchecked for this eye icon. And that means that they're basically off. So you can start turning them on one by one and see what they do. But basically, you can get an idea of just what they do, basically just with the name. So if you turn on the drop shadow, it'll automatically add a shadow to that shape layer. So I'll select Control Shift H to hide my masks. And then I'm going to turn on the inner shadow. And now we have an inner shadow. I'll turn on inner glow. And we have an outer glow. However, once we turn on a layer style and is visible, we can start playing with all these values that a layer style has. So each style will have its own blending mode, which if you don't understand blending modes, I do have a video explaining mostly just how blending modes work in layers. It's basically how the color of the layers interact with each other. And so you can start changing these values and see changes into whatever that layer style is doing. So I'll turn on only the drop shadow, and then I can start playing with distance and so on. The beauty about all these values inside the layer styles is that they can be keyed to be animated. And that way, if you wanted to move the shadow, you can move the distance. If you wanted to kind of fade away the shadow, you keyframe the noise, and as you can see, you start getting all these different values and looks that can help you reach specifically something that you're going after. And that's just one shadow. There is an effect where you can just drop in a shadow, and there's also an effect where you can just add a glow to a layer. We can see that After Effects has another shadow installed already, which is the drop shadow. The difference is that both of them will have different values, and it would be the same thing in case you want to add a glow. You will find a glow effect inside of After Effects already, but most likely they will have different values. And we can probably spend all day talking about a glow and each one of these specific values that a layer style can have. But what I want to show is that each one of these styles has specific values that change how the outcome of how the asset looks. So a simple example is here. It's applying a red overlay to it. So if I'm sorry, that was the glow. If I go to the color overlay, right now it has a red. So if I switch that to like a white, it kind of starts looking like a bit more of a 3D object. And so the more I play with these, the more of a difference that I'm going to get. But the reality is that once you understand what each one of these styles does, it most likely will help you reach a specific goal. And what I mean by that is the most common use that most people have for a layer style would be on a text. And me personally, I used to see that applying layer styles on text was done on Photoshop. That's where I saw that that feature was applied when I was learning during my first couple of years. And when I saw that tool inside of After Effects, I kind of related more towards the Photoshop area. But the truth is that if we apply those same concepts to specific things, we can achieve we can achieve a lot of outcomes. And so I want to show a few examples of how layer styles have helped me in the past. And so for sure, one of the first ones is going to be the text option that I have used, but I'll mention it again. Unless I am animating some of these values, so like this text, it has a color overlay that is a white, and if I turn it on, it looks kind of chromey-ish. And if we can tweak these values a little more, we can achieve probably a more specific look if we were going for a chrome look. Now you're probably asking yourself, why aren't you just doing a 3D object to achieve a chromed look? And that is very true. However, a lot of people don't have the need to use third-party plugins for 3D objects, and you can achieve a similar look with very simple effects. Well, back in the day before all these plugins existed, that's how those looks were achieved. Now, sure, they might not look exactly like a chromed letter, but that is my point. My point is that right now, this kind of looks like it's a bit of a chrome letter, but if I remove that color overlay, as of right now, I feel that it fits a little bit more in my composition overall because we have a dark background, and if we light this up, we will have some highlights, which is like around we have the glowish white highlight that we have around, but the overall reflection that we can see is a black color. So to me, that if I was trying to blend that acid into the composition, that seems a little bit more appealing. Of course, that could fall under preferences, but as you can see, it helps you achieve a lot of things in with very simple steps. So another step was that this element itself was a logo that is it has a black color, and so when I import a black background, the logo or image gets lost, and so the only way to bring it back is by applying layer styles, and so that's one way that I have used it. However, the most powerful feature that I see when working with text and layer styles, because we do have the character and text panel, and if we are working with some type of project that we are not 100% sure what we're doing, we are somewhat experimenting because that's just the feeling about it, we can play with the text's values and information. So if I wanted to make the text bigger, if I wanted to separate the text, if I wanted to enlarge the text, make it wider, you get the idea. But at the same time, I can change or update the font on the fly, and as I go, it will update the values to that font, and I can now see a completely different aspect or look into what I was working on, and I might get different ideas, I might get different feelings for other things, and I might end up with something better, which a lot of times that has happened. And so as you can see, as I change the font, that would just automatically update. And it will work with all sorts of fonts. Some fonts are very weird and some fonts are very cool. So give that a try. The next example will be a logo. So very similar to a text. This is just a PNG file that has pretty much a alpha background. So it has no color. And applying layer styles, we can achieve similar looks. So if I was going to go for any chromey-ish look, I could probably do that. If I wanted to change the color of something, the simple color overlay helps. If I wanted to make this blue, and so on. And then from there, I can take this new colored logo and change the values, etc. And that's just the color overlay. Another thing that I have used it for is very similar. I use the logo in this case kind of to make it a little bit more readable, but the idea of this particular composition or this particular example is that the information that is used, it's being pushed in basically in space. So I'm using a logo that it's a black logo that I apply and invert an invert effect, which makes it white, and After that, this layer has an inner shadow, which makes it look like it's inside the whites, the background. But if I wanted to keep the white background, I probably would have done the same. But in this case, I wanted to change it to kind of a little bit more of a bluish color, purplish. So I made a new background and a new color of a background. I duplicated that layer and I used the logo as the alpha matte for a second layer, which is slightly darker. So when I turn this on, it only affects the inside or where the logo is placed. So it makes it look like that part is slightly darker apart from the shadows that we see, but that is slightly darker. And the shadow that is being applied currently by the layer style makes it already look 3D-ish, but we can try to sell that idea a little bit more by applying other effects, as you can see with a little bit of a darker color. Another example that I have is a cartoon, which is basically made just by shape layers. And these shape layers, each one or most of them, will have a layer style applied to it. So both of these eyes have a drop shadow. And if I remove that drop shadow, you can see right away, I'll turn off the masks. It looks cartoonish, but I'm trying to go for a bit of a volumetric style. So as you can see, it's just adding volume to a layer. We can see here in the sweater that is blending perfectly the top because there is no change in the top of this layer. Therefore, it's affecting only the bottom when it's applying a shadow. And I am able to merge a couple of different layers that are just masks together. It's just a shape with a color applied to it and a shadow to give it some volume. And if applied correctly, you can give volume to things, shoes. And so there is really a lot of things that you can do, and these are just shadows, as you can see. They're very, very simple things. If we can take this to the next level and animate things, we can also animate the shadows to move with the movement of whatever is going on in the scene. A person is moving a hand, and you can move the shadow to the other side or something to give it a little bit more of a life, right? So things like that make something more appealing visually. So the power of a style, as you can see, is pretty big. And lastly, I have an sci-fi-ish composition where I used a layer style as my part of my final look. So here I have a scene set up with an Element 3D plugin, and in this scene I have a couple of blending layer styles. But that's what I use to give the glow to the earth and give it that kind of look that we see in space images. And if I turn off the layer styles, you can see that it looks completely different. It's a different thing. It's a completely different thing. And these are just layer styles being applied. I'm not saying this looks wrong for whatever it is that you're going for. I think this looks a little dead. It looks okay based on certain aspects, but it looks kind of dead. It's not necessarily what we see in pictures and stuff shared by NASA and all that. So we apply a glow and it looks completely different. And obviously we can start changing the way this glow looks. We can remove the outer glow, which to me gives it that life looking aspect when we see the pictures. We can remove part of the glow, which is that inner glow, and it doesn't necessarily look off. It doesn't necessarily look that bad. I like it with this glow, and if I bring this back an opacity down to like a 25, it looks even better, I think, now that I see it again. But as you can see, these are just layer styles. Sure, this is a layer style applied to a very powerful plugin, which is generating an earth. But that's about it. Everything else is oh, I need the camera. So everything else is it's not just it's that's just the plugin, and sure, once we apply a camera and a sun, we can make things look different, but at the end of the day, it's these layer styles that are selling the shot that I'm going for. And there's no necessarily a reason why you have to do these things like that. You can do the same thing in a completely different way. But the whole idea is that you might have a completely different idea of how to apply a layer style into a project. And if that happens, that means that you are already understanding what the power of that particular style is and how you can apply it in other things that will benefit you to achieve the looks that you're going for. So as you can see, I personally use layer styles in so many projects. I think that the power they have, just like any other effect, goes as far as you allow it to. They can be very, very useful if you use them in the right way that will help you. They can also be something very basic that you can discard and put aside because there's other ways to achieve the same thing. But because it's another tool that it's inside this particular software that can help you at one point or another, I think it's really good to know and understand how they work and what they are. And that way you expand the vision that you have for the software and what you can achieve with it. Okay, so those are the basics of layer styles. I hope that you learned something from it and that it helps you in your journey. I'll see you guys in the next one.